The rain hammered against the pavement like 1,000 tiny fists, each drop echoing the pain radiating through Sarah Mitchell's fractured arm. She stood on the front steps of what had been her home for 3 years, her suitcase lying in a puddle beside her, watching as the door slammed shut with a finality that matched the thunder rolling overhead. "I've been waiting for this moment for months." Marcus's voice still rang in her ears, cruel and triumphant. "Waiting for the perfect opportunity to be rid of you. And look at you now, broken and pathetic, just like I always knew you were deep down." Sarah's entire body trembled, though whether from the cold October rain or the shock of what had just happened, she couldn't tell. Her left arm was secured in a cast, the result of a fall down their stairs just 6 hours earlier. The emergency room doctor had been kind, gentle as he'd explained the fracture, the 6-week recovery period, the need for rest and care. She'd called Marcus from the hospital, her voice small and scared, expecting him to rush to her side. Instead, he'd arrived with cold efficiency, driven her home in silence, and the moment they'd walked through the door, everything had unraveled. "You think I didn't plan this?" Marcus had sneered, pulling her suitcase from the closet, already packed. She'd realized with growing horror. "I've been waiting for you to be at your most vulnerable. That's when people show their true colors, Sarah. That's when they're most honest about what they deserve." "Marcus, please," she'd begged, clutching her injured arm. "I don't understand. What did I do? What did you do?" He'd laughed, a sound devoid of any warmth. "You existed. You with your dreams of teaching, your pathetic attempts to make me into something I'm not. I never loved you, Sarah. You were a project, an experiment in how long I could pretend. And now I'm done pretending." The divorce papers had already been drawn up, he'd told her. His lawyer would be in touch. She had 30 minutes to leave. Now, standing in the deluge, Sarah felt the full weight of her situation crash over her. She was 26 years old with a master's degree she'd never been allowed to use because Marcus had convinced her they didn't need the money, that her place was at home. She had $43 in her purse, a dead cell phone, and nowhere to go. Her parents had retired to Arizona 2 years ago. Her best friend Jennifer was on her honeymoon in Europe, and Marcus had systematically isolated her from everyone else who might have helped. Sarah took a shaky step forward, her vision blurred by tears and rain. She had to find shelter, had to think, had to figure out what came next. But her mind felt as fractured as her arm, unable to focus on anything except the overwhelming reality that her entire life had just collapsed. She took another step, then another, her good hand clutching the handle of her suitcase as she dragged it through the rain. The wheels caught on an uneven section of sidewalk. Sarah stumbled, her balance already precarious. She felt herself falling and braced for the impact, for more pain to add to the symphony already coursing through her body. But the concrete never met her face. Strong arms caught her mid-fall, steadying her against a solid chest. The suitcase clattered to the ground, but Sarah barely noticed. She was too focused on the warmth of the stranger who'd just prevented her from breaking something else. "Whoa, I've got you," a deep voice said, gentle despite the chaos of the storm around them. "Are you okay?" Sarah looked up through the rain streaming down her face and met the most compassionate eyes she'd ever seen. The man holding her was tall, probably in his mid-30s, with dark hair plastered to his forehead and concern etched into every line of his handsome face. His business suit was getting thoroughly soaked, but he didn't seem to care. Sarah tried to speak, but her voice broke. The kindness in this stranger's eyes, such a stark contrast to the cruelty she'd just endured, shattered what little composure she had left. A sob tore from her throat, then another, until she was crying so hard she could barely breathe. The stranger didn't recoil from her distress. Instead, he guided her gently toward the awning of a nearby building, out of the worst of the rain. He retrieved her suitcase with one hand while keeping his other arm steady around her shoulders. "Let's get you out of this storm," he said softly. "My name is Daniel. Daniel Foster. I live just a couple blocks from here." He paused, seeming to recognize how that might sound. "I know you don't know me, and I know this is crazy, but you can't stay out here in this weather. Not with," his eyes fell on her cast. "Not when you're hurt. Please, let me help you." Sarah knew she should say no. Everything she'd been taught about stranger danger screamed at her to refuse. But as lightning split the sky and her arms sent a fresh wave of agony through her body, she realized she didn't have the luxury of caution. She was hurt, alone, and running out of options. "Sarah," she whispered through her tears. "My name is Sarah Mitchell." "It's nice to meet you, Sarah," Daniel said, and despite everything, his gentle smile made her feel fractionally less alone in the world. "I promise you're safe with me. My daughter's with my mother tonight, but my apartment is warm and dry. We'll get you taken care of, and then we can figure everything else out." "Okay." Sarah nodded, not trusting her voice. As they walked through the rain, Daniel keeping a respectful but supportive hand on her back, she thought about fate and divine intervention and whether the universe sometimes put people in your path exactly when you needed them most. She didn't know Daniel Foster. She didn't know if she could trust him, or if this was another mistake in a long line of poor decisions. But as they turned the corner toward his building, as he opened the door and ushered her into warmth and safety, Sarah felt something she hadn't experienced in years. She felt hope. It was a tiny ember in the darkness, barely more than a spark. But it was there, flickering stubbornly against the storm both outside and within her. And for now, that was enough. Daniel's apartment building was modest but well-maintained, with warm lighting in the hallways and the faint smell of someone's dinner cooking. He led her to the third floor, unlocking a door marked 3C, and gestured for her to enter first. The apartment was exactly what Sarah would have expected from a single father. Lived in, slightly chaotic, but undeniably homey. Children's toys were scattered across the living room floor in colorful disarray. The walls were covered with crayon drawings clearly made by tiny hands, each one displayed with the pride of a parent who treasured every scribble. A stuffed bunny sat on the couch, and children's books were stacked on the coffee table. "Let me grab you some towels," Daniel said, moving quickly to a nearby closet. "And I'll find you some dry clothes. My sister left some things here last time she visited. You're about the same size, I think." As he handed her a stack of fluffy towels, Sarah caught sight of herself in a mirror by the door. She looked like she'd been through a war. Mascara streaming down her face in dark rivers, hair hanging in wet tangles, eyes red and swollen from crying. She looked exactly how she felt. Broken. "The bathroom's just down the hall," Daniel said kindly. "Take your time. There's no rush." Alone in the small bathroom, Sarah carefully peeled off her soaked clothes, moving slowly to protect her injured arm. The cast was waterproof, thank God, but everything else was drenched. She dried herself as best she could, then caught sight of her reflection again. "You survived," she whispered to the woman in the mirror. "Marcus tried to break you, but you're still here. You're still standing." It wasn't much of a pep talk, but it was something. And right now, something was all she had. A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. "Sarah? I'm leaving some clothes by the door," Daniel called. "Take all the time you need." The clothes were comfortable and warm, soft sweatpants, and an oversized sweater that smelled faintly of lavender detergent. When Sarah emerged from the bathroom, she found that Daniel had changed into dry clothes as well and was in the kitchen making tea. "I hope you like chamomile," he said, pouring steaming water into 2 mugs. It's about all I have besides coffee, and I thought something calming might be better right now. Thank you, Sarah said quietly, accepting the mug he offered. The warmth of it seeped into her hands, and she wrapped both around it gratefully. I can't thank you enough for this. For everything. You don't have to thank me, Daniel replied, settling into a chair across from her. His eyes were kind but concerned. I don't want to pry, Sarah, but is there someone I should call? Family? Friends? Someone who might be worried about you. Sarah thought about her parents in Arizona, who she'd call tomorrow when she could have that conversation without falling apart completely. She thought about Jennifer, unreachable on her honeymoon. She thought about the friends she'd had before Marcus, the ones who'd slowly drifted away or been deliberately pushed out of her life. Tomorrow, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I'll figure it all out tomorrow. Tonight, I just need. She trailed off, unsure how to finish that sentence. Tonight, you need to rest, Daniel finished for her, his voice gentle. And that's okay. I have a guest room. It's small, but it's comfortable. It's yours for as long as you need it. I can't possibly impose. You're not imposing, Daniel interrupted firmly, but kindly. You're accepting help when you need it, which actually takes a lot of courage. He paused, seeming to weigh his words. Look, Sarah, I don't know what happened to you tonight, and you don't have to tell me if you don't want to. But I do know what it's like to have your world fall apart. He took a sip of his tea, his eyes distant. 3 years ago, my wife left me when our daughter Lily was just 4 months old. Just walked out one day and filed for divorce 2 weeks later. Said she couldn't handle being a mother, couldn't handle the responsibility. If it hadn't been for the people who helped me through that time, people who showed me kindness when I didn't think I deserved it, I don't know where I'd be now. Sarah felt fresh tears prick her eyes, but these were different. These weren't tears of despair, but of unexpected connection, of finding someone who understood what it felt like to be abandoned by someone who was supposed to love you. Your daughter, Sarah said softly. Lily. How old is she now? Daniel's entire face transformed when he smiled. She just turned 2 last month. She's the light of my life, Sarah. Everything I do, everything I am, is for her. He pulled out his phone and showed her a picture, a little girl with dark curls and her father's kind eyes, grinning at the camera with frosting all over her face. This was at her birthday party. She discovered cake. Despite everything, Sarah found herself smiling. She's beautiful. She is, Daniel agreed, tucking his phone away. And she's staying with my mother tonight, which is probably for the best given the circumstances. But you'll meet her tomorrow if you're still here. If you're still here. The words hung in the air, a question, and an offer all at once. Why are you being so kind to me? Sarah asked, the question that had been burning in her mind since he'd caught her in the rain. Daniel was quiet for a long moment, considering. When he spoke, his voice was thoughtful and sincere. 3 years ago, when my wife left and I was completely lost, a stranger helped me. I was in the grocery store, standing in the baby food aisle, and I just broke down. Completely lost it. And this woman, Margaret was her name, she didn't walk away. She didn't pretend not to notice. She came over and she helped me. He smiled at the memory. She became one of my best friends. She helped me learn how to be a single dad, connected me with resources, just showed up when I needed someone. She passed away last year, but she taught me something important. Sometimes we're put in people's paths for a reason. Maybe I was meant to catch you tonight, Sarah. Maybe this is my chance to pay forward the kindness that saved me. Sarah didn't know what to say to that. She'd spent so long in a marriage where kindness came with strings attached, where love was wielded like a weapon. The simple, genuine compassion Daniel was offering felt almost foreign, too good to be true. But as she sat in his warm apartment, drinking tea and feeling the first stirrings of safety she'd experienced in years, Sarah allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, there were still good people in the world. People who helped without expecting anything in return. People who caught you when you fell. "I'll stay tonight," she said finally. "If you're sure it's okay." "I'm sure," Daniel said with a warm smile. "Come on, let me show you the guest room." As Sarah settled into the unfamiliar bed that night, her arm aching despite the pain medication, she thought about endings and beginnings. She thought about the man who'd thrown her away and the stranger who'd caught her. She thought about tomorrow and all the unknowns it held. And for the first time in longer than she could remember, she thought that maybe, just maybe, she was going to be okay. Morning came softly, filtered through curtains Sarah didn't recognize in a room that wasn't hers. For a disoriented moment, she couldn't remember where she was or how she'd gotten here. Then it all came flooding back. The rain, Marcus's cruelty, Daniel's unexpected kindness. She sat up carefully, her arm protesting the movement, and caught the scent of coffee brewing and something sweet baking. Voices drifted through the door. A deep male voice and a higher, musical one filled with excitement. Sarah found clothes laid out on a chair near the door. Jeans and a soft blue sweater, both new with tags still attached. A note rested on top in masculine handwriting. "Ran out early and grabbed these. Hope they fit. No rush this morning. D." The thoughtfulness of it made her throat tight. When was the last time someone had anticipated her needs without being asked? She couldn't remember. After dressing and attempting to make herself presentable with one working hand, Sarah ventured out of the guest room. The apartment looked different in daylight, still lived in and cluttered with toys, but bright and cheerful. Sunlight streamed through the windows, and she could see Daniel in the kitchen, an apron tied around his waist, while a little girl with wild dark curls sat at the table, swinging her legs and chattering nonstop. And then Mr. Hops said he wanted strawberries, but Grandma said we only had blueberries, so Mr. Hops said that was okay, because bunnies like all berries, right, Daddy? "That's very true, sweetheart," Daniel said, his voice warm with affection. Then he looked up and saw Sarah hovering in the doorway. His face broke into a welcoming smile. "Good morning. I hope we didn't wake you." Someone was very excited to come home this morning. The little girl, Lily, turned in her chair to look at Sarah with huge, curious eyes. She clutched a stuffed bunny that Sarah recognized from the photo. For a moment, they simply stared at each other, child and stranger, each taking the other's measure. Then Lily smiled, a gap-toothed grin that lit up her whole face. "Hi. Are you Miss Sarah? Daddy said you're staying with us. Do you like pancakes? Daddy makes the best pancakes in the whole world. They have chocolate chips." The rapid-fire questions, delivered with such innocent enthusiasm, made Sarah's heart squeeze. "Hi, Lily," she said softly, moving into the kitchen. "Yes, I'm Sarah and I love pancakes. Especially ones with chocolate chips." "See, Daddy. I told you everybody loves chocolate chip pancakes," Lily announced triumphantly. Then her eyes landed on Sarah's cast. "What happened to your arm? Did you fall down?" "I fell down last week and got a boo-boo on my knee. Wanna see?" Before Sarah could respond, Lily was pulling up her pajama pants to show a small bandage on her knee. It was a big boo-boo, but Daddy kissed it and made it better. He's very good at making boo-boos better. "I bet he is," Sarah said, glancing at Daniel, who was watching the interaction with an expression she couldn't quite read. "I did fall, sweetie," Sarah explained, kneeling down to Lily's level despite the protest from her sore body. "And yes, it was a pretty big boo-boo. But the doctors at the hospital helped make it better, and now I have to wear this special cast for a while." Lily reached out with one small hand and gently patted the cast. Does it still hurt? A little bit, Sarah admitted. Lily's face scrunched up in concentration. Then, with great ceremony, she kissed her own hand and carefully pressed it against Sarah's cast. There. Kiss makes it better. That's what Daddy always says. Something broke open in Sarah's chest, a dam she'd built to hold back everything she'd lost, everything she'd never had. She'd wanted children for so long, had dreamed of being a mother, but Marcus had always said, not yet, and not yet had stretched into never. Now this sweet little girl, who barely knew her, was offering comfort in the most innocent, beautiful way possible. Thank you, Lily, Sarah whispered, her voice thick. That helps so much. Okay, Lily announced, apparently satisfied with her healing abilities. Now can we have pancakes?
I'm very hungry, Daddy.
Very, very hungry. Daniel laughed, a sound full of love and gentle exasperation. Pancakes coming right up. Sarah, why don't you have a seat? Coffee. Please, Sarah said gratefully, sliding into a chair at the table. Lily immediately scooted her own chair closer, apparently deciding that Sarah was her new best friend. Miss Sarah, do you have a favorite color? Mine is purple, but also pink, and sometimes yellow. And Mr. Hops likes green because bunnies eat green things like grass and… Lily's sweetheart. Maybe let Miss Sarah have her coffee before the interrogation, Daniel interjected gently, setting a steaming mug in front of Sarah. It was fixed exactly the way she'd mentioned she liked it last night. Cream, no sugar. The fact that he'd remembered such a small detail made her heart skip. Over breakfast, Daniel's pancakes were indeed excellent. Sarah watched the easy rhythm between father and daughter. Daniel was patient and attentive, anticipating Lily's needs before she voiced them. He wiped chocolate from her face with practiced efficiency, laughed at her rambling stories about Mr. Hops's adventures, and somehow managed to make breakfast feel like the most important event of the day. This was what a family was supposed to look like, Sarah thought. Not the cold, controlling environment Marcus had created, but this warm chaos of sticky fingers and silly stories and unconditional love freely given. Sarah, Daniel said as Lily ran off to find her crayons, I took the liberty of making some calls this morning. I have a friend who's a family law attorney, one of the best in Philadelphia. She's agreed to see you this afternoon pro bono to discuss your options regarding the divorce. Sarah's eyes widened. Daniel, I can't ask you to. You didn't ask, he said firmly. I offered. Sarah, you need legal representation, and Claire is brilliant. She helped me navigate my divorce, and she'll make sure you're protected. He paused, his voice softening. You don't have to do this alone. Please, let people help you. Before Sarah could respond, Lily returned, dragging a box of crayons and a coloring book. Miss Sarah, will you color with me? I have a picture of a princess, and she needs to be pretty. Sarah looked at the little girl's hopeful face, then at Daniel's kind eyes, and felt something shift inside her. For 3 years, she'd been told she was worthless, that she couldn't do anything right, that she should be grateful anyone tolerated her. But these two people, a man she'd met just hours ago and his 2-year-old daughter, were showing her more genuine care and respect than Marcus ever had. I'd love to color with you, Lily, Sarah said, and meant it with her whole heart. The day unfolded in a gentle rhythm. Sarah colored with Lily, marveling at the little girl's creativity and endless chatter. She met with Claire, the attorney, who was indeed brilliant, and immediately started building a case to ensure Sarah got what she deserved from the divorce. She called her parents, who were horrified by what had happened, and immediately offered to fly home, but Sarah assured them she was safe and would keep them updated. And through it all, Daniel was there, not hovering, not pressuring, just present. He worked from his home office while Lily napped, checking in periodically to make sure Sarah had everything she needed. He ordered dinner from a local Italian place, and the three of them ate together, Lily regaling them with an elaborate story about Mr. Hops's trip to the moon. That evening, as Sarah helped Daniel with Lily's bedtime routine, she found herself naturally falling into the role. She ran the bath while Daniel gathered pajamas, tested the water temperature, helped wash Lily's hair with gentle care. Story time, Lily announced once she was clean and dressed. "Miss Sarah, will you read to me?" "Daddy always reads 3 books. Always 3. Never more, never less." Sarah glanced at Daniel, who nodded encouragingly. It's her sacred rule. 3 books, no negotiating. So Sarah read 3 books. One about a brave mouse, one about a princess who saved herself, and one about the moon. Lily snuggled against her side, thumb in mouth, growing drowsier with each page. When Sarah finished the 3rd book and went to stand, Lily's small hand caught hers. "Will you sing to me?" "Daddy sings the sleepy song." "Oh, sweetie, I don't know the sleepy song," Sarah said softly. "I can teach you," Lily offered, then proceeded to hum a simple lullaby that was off-key but achingly sweet. So Sarah sang, her voice soft and unpracticed, while Lily's eyes slowly closed. She tucked the blanket around the little girl, smoothed her wild curls, and pressed a gentle kiss to her forehead. "Love you, Miss Sarah," Lily murmured, already half asleep. The words hit Sarah like a physical force. This child, who'd known her for less than a day, was offering her love with the easy generosity that only children possess. And Sarah realized, with a clarity that took her breath away, that she loved this little girl too. "Love you too, sweetheart," she whispered back, and she meant it with her whole heart. Daniel was waiting in the hallway when she emerged, his expression soft. "You're a natural with her." "She's incredible," Sarah said simply. "You've done an amazing job, Daniel. She's so happy, so confident, so loved." "It hasn't always been easy," Daniel admitted, leading her back to the living room. "Those first months after Rebecca left, I had no idea what I was doing. I was terrified I was going to mess her up, that she'd grow up damaged because her mother abandoned her." "But you didn't mess up," Sarah said firmly. "Look at her, Daniel. She's thriving. She knows she's loved. That's what matters." Daniel smiled, but there was something melancholy in it. "Can I ask you something? And please feel free to say no if it's too personal." "Of course." "What happened? Last night, I mean. You don't have to tell me details, but are you safe? Is someone looking for you?" Sarah took a deep breath and found herself telling him everything. About meeting Marcus at a charity gala 4 years ago, about how charming and attentive he'd been at first, about how slowly, subtly, he'd isolated her from her friends and family, how he'd convinced her to give up her career plans, to make him the center of her world, how he'd criticized everything she did, made her feel small and worthless, until she'd almost believed she deserved the way he treated her. "Yesterday's fall was an accident," she said quietly. "I tripped on the stairs, broke my arm. But when I called him from the hospital, I could hear it in his voice, the satisfaction. Like this was the moment he'd been waiting for. When he brought me home and told me he was throwing me out, he said he'd been planning it for months, waiting for me to be at my most vulnerable, so he could prove I was nothing." Daniel's jaw was tight, his hands clenched into fists. "That's not love, Sarah. That's abuse. And I'm so sorry you went through that." "I should have left sooner," Sarah said, shame coloring her voice. "I should have seen what he was." "No," Daniel interrupted firmly. "Don't do that. Don't blame yourself for his cruelty. You survived, Sarah. You got out. That takes incredible strength." Sarah felt tears prick her eyes, but she blinked them back. She'd cried enough. I don't feel strong. I feel broken. Then let me tell you what I see, Daniel said gently. I see a woman who's been through hell, but who still knows how to be kind. I see someone who got thrown out in a storm with a broken arm and $43, and instead of giving up, she's already meeting with lawyers and making plans. I see someone who my daughter fell in love with in approximately 30 seconds, which, trust me, doesn't happen with just anyone. He moved closer, his voice intense but kind. You're strong, Sarah. You're brave and resilient and good. And I know it probably doesn't feel like it right now, but you're going to be okay. Better than okay. You're going to thrive. Sarah looked up at this man who was essentially a stranger, yet who seemed to see her more clearly than anyone ever had. How can you be so sure? Because I've been where you are, Daniel said simply. Different circumstances, maybe, but the same feeling of having your world collapse. And I can tell you from experience, it gets better. Not all at once, and not in a straight line, but it gets better. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, and Sarah felt some of the tension that had been coiled in her chest since yesterday start to loosen. She was safe here. She was valued here. She had time to figure things out. Daniel, she said finally, I can't stay here forever. I need to find a job, get my own place, start rebuilding my life. But would it be okay if I stayed just a little while longer? Just until I get on my feet. Sarah, Daniel said, and there was something in his voice that made her heart skip. You can stay as long as you need. And I mean that. This is your home now, for as long as you want it to be. Home. The word settled into Sarah's chest like a warm ember. She'd had a house with Marcus, but it had never been a home. This small, cluttered apartment with its crayon drawings on the walls and toys on the floor, this felt more like home than anywhere she'd lived in years. Thank you, she whispered. You're welcome, Daniel replied. Then he smiled, lightening the mood. Besides, Lily has already decided you're staying permanently. She told me at dinner that you're her new best friend, and Mr. Hops agrees with her. I don't have the heart to argue with Mr. Hops. Sarah laughed, the sound surprising her with its genuineness. Well, if Mr. Hops has spoken. Exactly, Daniel said with a grin. His word is law in this house. As Sarah got ready for bed that night, she looked at herself in the mirror again. She still looked tired, still bore the marks of yesterday's trauma. But there was something different in her eyes, a spark that hadn't been there before. Hope. Determination. The beginning of belief that maybe she deserved better than what Marcus had given her. She thought about Lily's easy affection, about Daniel's unwavering kindness, about the lawyer who was fighting for her and the parents who loved her. She thought about second chances and new beginnings. And for the first time in 3 years, Sarah Mitchell allowed herself to imagine a future worth fighting for. 3 months passed in what felt like both an eternity and the blink of an eye. Sarah found her rhythm in this new life, and with each passing day, she felt more like herself, or perhaps like the person she'd always been meant to be, but had forgotten how to access. The teaching job came first. Mrs. Patricia Chen, principal of Lincoln Elementary School, had interviewed Sarah on a Tuesday afternoon and offered her a position teaching 2nd grade by that Friday. I've been in education for 30 years, Mrs. Chun had said, her eyes warm behind wire-rimmed glasses, and I can tell within 5 minutes whether someone has the gift. You have it, Sarah. These kids need you. Sarah had cried in the parking lot after accepting the offer, overwhelmed by the reality that someone believed in her capabilities, that she was finally going to use her master's degree that Marcus had always dismissed as a waste of time and money. Her classroom became her sanctuary. She decorated it with bright colors and inspirational quotes, created cozy reading nooks, and engaging learning centers. Her 23 students, a beautiful mix of personalities and backgrounds, quickly stole her heart. There was Miguel, who struggled with reading but had an incredible mind for math. Emma, who wrote stories with imagination that took Sarah's breath away. David, who'd been labeled a problem child but who Sarah discovered just needed someone to see past his defenses to the scared kid underneath. Miss Mitchell is the best teacher ever. She'd overheard Emma tell her mother one afternoon during pickup. She makes everything fun, and she never makes us feel bad when we don't understand something. Those words had sustained Sarah through the harder moments, of which there were many. The divorce proceedings with Marcus were brutal. He fought her on everything: the division of assets, spousal support, even the personal belongings she'd asked to retrieve from their former home. Claire, her attorney, was a fierce advocate, but there were days when Sarah felt ground down by Marcus's vindictiveness. "He wants you to give up," Claire told her during one particularly difficult meeting. "He wants you to feel like you're not worth the fight."
Don't let him win, Sarah.
"You deserve everything you're asking for, and we're going to make sure you get it." Through it all, Daniel and Lily were her anchors. The routine they'd fallen into felt as natural as breathing. Sarah would wake early, often finding Daniel already in the kitchen making coffee. They'd talk quietly while the apartment was still peaceful, sharing their plans for the day, discussing everything from work stress to Lily's latest hilarious pronouncement. Then Lily would wake up, a whirlwind of energy and demands for breakfast and stories about the dreams she'd had. Sarah would help get her ready for preschool while Daniel packed lunches and gathered work materials. On the days when Daniel had to go into the office early, Sarah would drop Lily off at Little Learners Preschool, treasuring the little girl's enthusiastic hugs and "Love you, Miss Sarah," before she ran off to play with her friends. Evenings were sacred. Sarah would come home from teaching, often exhausted but fulfilled in a way she'd never experienced before, to find Lily waiting eagerly by the door. They'd do art projects or read books or play elaborate make-believe games where Mr. Hops went on adventures to exotic locations like the top of the refrigerator and under the couch where the dust bunnies live. Daniel would arrive home sometime later. He worked in finance, managing portfolios for a mid-sized investment firm. He was good at his job, made a comfortable living, though he was far from the billionaire lifestyle. Rich enough to be stable and provide for Lily, he'd once told Sarah, but not so rich that I forget what matters. They'd make dinner together, the three of them working in the kitchen with surprising coordination. Lily would set the table with utmost seriousness, carefully placing each fork and spoon exactly so. They'd eat as a family, sharing stories from their days, and Sarah would feel her heart expand with a happiness she'd never known existed. Bath time and bedtime were Sarah's domain. She'd taken over these duties entirely, and they'd become her favorite parts of the day. Lily would chatter endlessly in the bathtub, creating elaborate scenarios with her bath toys. Sarah would wash her hair with gentle care, marveling at how much the little girl had grown in just 3 months. The bedtime routine never varied. 3 books. Lily's sacred rule remained inviolate. A lullaby, and then the words that never failed to make Sarah's heart clench. "Love you, Mama." It had started 6 weeks ago. Lily had been drowsy, clutching Mr. Hops, and the word had just slipped out. "Love you, Mama," she'd murmured, already half asleep. Sarah had frozen, her hand suspended mid-motion as she'd been smoothing Lily's curls. She glanced at the doorway where Daniel stood, his expression unreadable. For a long moment, neither of them had moved. Then Daniel had smiled, a soft, genuine smile that reached his eyes, and nodded slightly. Permission, acceptance, perhaps even hope. "Love you too, sweetheart," Sarah had whispered back, and something fundamental had shifted in her world. Now, 3 months into this unexpected life, Sarah couldn't imagine being anywhere else. She'd saved enough money to afford her own place if she wanted to. Claire had assured her the divorce settlement would provide additional financial security. She had options, independence, the freedom to start fresh on her own terms. But every time she thought about leaving, about finding her own apartment and removing herself from Daniel and Lily's daily life, something in her chest tightened painfully. This wasn't just convenience or gratitude anymore. Somewhere along the way, in the quiet mornings and chaotic evenings, in the shared laughter and comfortable silences, Sarah had fallen in love. She loved Lily with a fierceness that sometimes scared her. The little girl was hers in every way that mattered, not by blood, but by choice, by the thousand small moments of care and connection that built a mother-daughter relationship. And Daniel, God, Daniel. She loved the way he made coffee exactly how she liked it without being asked. Loved how he listened when she talked about her students, offering thoughtful insights and genuine interest. Loved watching him with Lily, the patience and devotion he showed his daughter every single day. Loved his integrity, his kindness, the way he'd given her space to heal without pushing for anything in return. She loved the man he was, and she was terrified of what that meant. One evening in late January, after Lily had finally fallen asleep following an energetic day at preschool, Sarah found Daniel in the living room. He was sitting on the couch, staring at his laptop, but clearly not seeing whatever was on the screen. "Everything okay?" Sarah asked, settling into the other end of the couch. Daniel looked up, and Sarah was struck by the intensity in his gaze. "Sarah, we need to talk." Her heart plummeted. This was it. He was going to tell her it was time to move out, that she'd stayed long enough, that the arrangement had run its course. She'd known this day would come eventually, but she wasn't ready. She'd never be ready. "Okay," she managed, her voice steady despite the panic rising in her chest. Daniel closed his laptop and turned to face her fully. "These past 3 months have been..." He paused, seeming to search for the right words. "They've been some of the best months of my life, Sarah. Not just because of the help with Lily, though that's been wonderful, but because you're here. Because you make this apartment feel like a real home. Because I wake up looking forward to seeing you at breakfast, and I find myself texting you during the day just to share something I think you'd find funny. Because..." He stopped, running a hand through his hair in a gesture Sarah had come to recognize as nervousness. "I'm handling this badly. What I'm trying to say is that somewhere along the way, you stopped being a guest or a roommate or even just a friend. You became family. Lily sees you as her mother. Hell, she calls you Mama when she thinks I can't hear. And I..." Daniel took a deep breath, his eyes locked on Sarah's. "I've fallen in love with you, Sarah. Completely, terrifyingly in love with you. And I know the timing is terrible. I know you're still recovering from your marriage, still building your new life. The last thing you need is me complicating everything with feelings. But I can't keep pretending that what I feel for you is just friendship or gratitude. It's so much more than that." Sarah's breath caught in her throat. Her mind raced, her heart pounding so hard she was sure Daniel could hear it. Every fear, every insecurity Marcus had planted in her whispered that this was too good to be true, that she'd mess it up somehow, that she didn't deserve this kind of love. But louder than those fears was the truth she'd been trying to ignore for weeks. She loved him too. She loved him with her whole heart, in a way she'd never loved Marcus, in a way she hadn't known she was capable of loving. "Daniel," she started, her voice shaking slightly. "Wait," he interrupted gently. "Before you say anything, I need you to know that nothing has to change. If you don't feel the same way, we can go back to how things were. You'll always have a place here, always be part of Lily's life. I won't make this weird or uncomfortable. Your friendship is too important to me to risk losing it." Sarah looked at this man who'd saved her in every way a person could be saved, who'd given her shelter and safety when she had nowhere else to go, who'd supported her dreams, celebrated her victories, and helped her remember who she was, who loved his daughter with such devotion that it made her heart ache, who was now offering her his heart while simultaneously giving her an out, putting her comfort above his own desires. This was what love was supposed to look like. Not Marcus's twisted version of possession and control, but this: respect, support, genuine care. The freedom to choose without pressure or manipulation. And Sarah knew, with absolute certainty, what her choice was. "I'm scared," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'm terrified, actually. I'm scared of getting hurt again. I'm scared of not being good enough. I'm scared that I don't know how to be in a healthy relationship because I've never actually had one." Daniel nodded, his expression understanding. "I'm scared too. Terrified that I'm going to mess this up, that I'm not enough, that something will go wrong and I'll lose you." "But Sarah..." "But being scared doesn't mean we're wrong," Sarah interrupted, a small smile tugging at her lips. "It just means we care enough to worry about doing this right." Hope flickered in Daniel's eyes. "Exactly." Sarah took a deep breath, gathering her courage. "Daniel Foster, I am completely, utterly in love with you. I love the way you make coffee in the morning and the way you read bedtime stories in different voices. I love how you never make me feel inadequate or small. I love watching you with Lily, seeing how patient and devoted you are. I love that you gave me space to heal without asking for anything in return. I love..." She trailed off, overwhelmed by the enormity of her feelings. "I love you," she finished simply. "And I'm choosing you. I'm choosing us. Every single day I choose this." The kiss, when it came, was everything Sarah had imagined and more. It was gentle but certain, sweet but passionate, filled with 3 months of unspoken feelings and hopes for the future. Daniel cupped her face in his hands like she was something precious, and Sarah melted into him, finally allowing herself to believe that this was real, that she deserved this happiness. When they finally pulled apart, both slightly breathless, Daniel rested his forehead against hers. "I promise," he said fiercely, "to never make you feel like you did with Marcus. I promise to listen to you, to respect you, to support your dreams. I promise to love you exactly as you are, without trying to change you or control you. I promise that you'll always be an equal partner, that your voice will always matter." "And I promise," Sarah said, her own voice thick with emotion, "to trust you, even when it's scary. I promise to be honest about my needs and my fears. I promise to love Lily like she's my own daughter, because that's exactly how I see her. I promise to choose us, every single day." They sat together on the couch, wrapped in each other's arms, and talked for hours. About their hopes and fears, about what a relationship between them would look like, about how to navigate this new dynamic while keeping Lily's needs first. "We take it slow," Daniel suggested. "We keep being honest with each other about what we're feeling. We make sure Lily feels secure and loved through all of this. And we remember that we're a team, figuring this out together." "Together," Sarah agreed, loving the sound of that word. Later that night, as Sarah lay in bed, the guest room that had somehow become her room, she thought about how drastically her life had changed in just 3 months. She'd gone from broken and abandoned to loved and valued. She'd found not just a place to live, but a home. Not just people to coexist with, but a family. She thought about Lily sleeping peacefully down the hall, about Daniel in his own room, about the life they were building together. And for the first time since that rainy night when her world had collapsed, Sarah allowed herself to believe in happily ever after. Not the fairy tale kind where everything was perfect, but the real kind, messy and complicated and absolutely worth fighting for. 6 months into their relationship, everything changed on a Tuesday afternoon in late summer. Sarah was in her classroom, putting the finishing touches on a bulletin board display of her students' creative writing projects, when her phone buzzed with a text from Daniel. "Can we talk tonight? After Lily's asleep?" "It's important." Her heart immediately started racing. Those words, "We need to talk, it's important," they never meant anything good. She'd been through this before with Marcus. The anxiety that flooded through her was instinctive, a trauma response she'd been working to overcome with her therapist. She forced herself to breathe. This was Daniel. Daniel, who loved her, who'd never given her any reason to doubt his commitment. Whatever he needed to discuss, they'd handle it together. That's what partners did. Still, she couldn't shake the unease that settled in her stomach for the rest of the day. That evening, Sarah went through the motions of their normal routine with a knot of anxiety tightening in her chest. She helped Lily with dinner, gave her a bath, read the mandatory 3 books, and sang the lullaby that had become their ritual. But her mind was elsewhere, trying to anticipate what Daniel needed to talk about. "You okay, Mama?" Lily asked sleepily, her little hand reaching up to pat Sarah's cheek. "You seem sad." Sarah's heart clenched at the observation. Even at 2.5, Lily was incredibly perceptive. "I'm okay, sweetheart. Just thinking about grown-up stuff. Nothing for you to worry about. If you're sad, you should tell Daddy," Lily advised with the simple wisdom of a child. "Daddy's very good at making sad go away. He makes my sad go away all the time." "You're absolutely right," Sarah said, kissing her forehead. "That's exactly what I'm going to do. Now close your eyes and dream about Mr. Hops's adventures." "Mr. Hops is going to the zoo tomorrow," Lily informed her seriously. "To visit his cousin, who is also a bunny but lives with the real bunnies." "That sounds like an excellent adventure," Sarah said with a smile. "Sleep tight, my love." "Love you, Mama." "Love you too, baby." Sarah found Daniel in the living room, sitting on the couch with a glass of wine in hand and another poured for her on the coffee table. His expression was serious, almost troubled, and Sarah's anxiety ratcheted up another notch. "Hey," she said softly, settling onto the couch beside him. "You wanted to talk?" Daniel took a deep breath, and Sarah noticed his hands were shaking slightly. Whatever he was about to say, it was clearly difficult for him too. "Sarah, I got a call today from my boss. There's a major project in Seattle, a potential merger with a tech company out there that could be huge for the firm. They want me to head up the financial analysis team." Sarah's first thought was pride. Of course they'd chosen Daniel. He was brilliant at his job. But then the implications started sinking in. Seattle? For how long? 3 weeks, Daniel said, his eyes searching her face. "Maybe 4. I'd be leaving on Monday." That's great, Daniel," Sarah said, trying to inject enthusiasm into her voice despite the sinking feeling in her stomach. "This is a big opportunity for you." "It is," Daniel agreed, but there was no excitement in his voice. "But Sarah, there's something else. Something I need to talk to you about, and I need you to really hear me, okay?" Sarah nodded, her mouth suddenly dry. Daniel set down his wine glass and turned to face her fully, taking both her hands in his. "These past 6 months with you have been incredible. Better than I ever thought possible. You've become such an integral part of my life, of Lily's life. You're not just my girlfriend, Sarah. You're my partner, Lily's mother in every way that matters, my best friend." "But," Sarah whispered, because she could hear it coming. "But I'm scared," Daniel admitted, his voice rough with emotion. "I'm scared that we moved too fast." That you went from a traumatic divorce straight into a relationship with me without really taking time to figure out what you wanted. That maybe you're with me because I was there when you needed someone, not because you'd choose me if you had other options. Sarah felt like she'd been slapped. Daniel, that's not. Please let me finish, he interrupted gently. I need to say this, even though it's killing me. Sarah, you moved in when you were at your absolute lowest point. You were vulnerable and scared and hurt, and I was the person who helped you. That's how we started. And I need to be sure that what we have now is real. That you're here because you want to be, not because you feel obligated or grateful. You think I'm with you out of gratitude? Sarah's voice cracked on the last word, hurt flooding through her. I don't know, Daniel said, his own voice rising before he caught himself and lowered it. I don't know, Sarah, and that terrifies me. Because I have Lily to think about. She already calls you Mama. She's so attached to you that if this doesn't work out, if you realize a year from now that you settled for the first safe harbor you found after Marcus, it's going to destroy her. It's going to destroy me. Sarah pulled her hands from his, standing up and pacing across the room. Her mind was reeling, emotions crashing through her in waves. Hurt, anger, fear, confusion. So, what are you saying? That you want to break up? No, Daniel said firmly, standing as well.
God, no.
Sarah, I love you. I love you so much it scares me. That's why I need to do this. He took a shaky breath. While I'm in Seattle, I think we need space. Real space. I won't call you, just Lily, for our nightly check-ins. I won't text. We need time apart to really think about what we want, who we are outside of this bubble we've been living in. You're cutting me off, Sarah said, her voice hollow. You're just going to shut me out for 3 weeks? I'm giving us both space to be certain, Daniel countered, though his expression showed how much this was costing him. Sarah, if this is real, and God, I hope it's real, then 3 weeks apart won't change that. We'll come back together stronger, more sure. But if it's not... He trailed off, unable to finish the thought. And what about Lily? Sarah asked, tears now streaming down her face. You're asking me to stay here and take care of your daughter while you're gone, but you won't even talk to me? Do you have any idea how cruel that is? Daniel crossed the room and tried to take her hands again, but Sarah pulled away. I know it seems cruel, he said softly. I know it doesn't make sense. But Sarah, I trust you with the most precious thing in my life. That has to tell you something about how I feel. My mother could watch Lily, but I don't want that. I want her here, in her home, with you. Because despite my fears, despite my doubts, I know that you love her. I know you'll take care of her. That part I've never questioned. Just us, Sarah said bitterly. Just whether I actually love you, or if I'm just using you. That's not fair, Daniel said, his voice pained. You know that's not what I think. Then what do you think? Sarah demanded, her voice breaking. Because from where I'm standing, it sounds like you've decided I'm not capable of knowing my own heart. That I'm too damaged or too stupid or too something to understand what I want. Sarah, please. No, she interrupted, holding up her hand. You want space? Fine. You'll have your space. I'll stay here and take care of Lily because I love her, because she needs stability and routine. But don't pretend this is some noble gesture, Daniel. Don't pretend you're doing this for us. You're doing this because you're scared, and instead of talking to me about it, instead of trusting in what we've built together, you're running away. The words hung in the air between them, sharp and painful. Daniel's face was a mask of anguish, but he didn't argue. Maybe because he knew, on some level, that she was right. I'm sorry, he said finally, his voice barely above a whisper.
I'm so sorry, Sarah.
I don't want to hurt you. That's the last thing I want. But I need to do this. I need to know. Sarah wiped her tears with the back of her hand, drawing on reserves of strength she'd built over the past 6 months. Then do what you need to do, Daniel. I'll be here, taking care of your daughter, thinking about whether I want to be with someone who doubts me this much. The words were meant to hurt, and they did. She could see it in the way Daniel flinched, in the pain that flashed across his face. But she was hurting too, and she needed him to understand what he was doing to her. 3 weeks, Daniel said, his voice hollow. And then we'll talk. Really talk. 3 weeks, Sarah agreed, her tone flat. That night, they slept in separate rooms, truly separate, with closed doors and aching hearts. Sarah lay in her bed, staring at the ceiling, trying to process what had just happened. Was Daniel right? Had she rushed into this relationship without fully healing for Marcus? Was what she felt for Daniel real love, or was it gratitude and dependency dressed up as something more? But even as she asked herself these questions, she knew the answers. What she felt for Daniel was nothing like what she'd felt for Marcus. With Marcus, love had been a cage, a weapon he used to control her. With Daniel, love was freedom, the freedom to be herself, to pursue her dreams, to grow and evolve. He'd never tried to change her or diminish her. He'd only ever supported and celebrated her. And yet, here he was, pushing her away, testing her, asking her to prove something she thought she'd already proven every single day for 6 months. Sarah rolled over, hugging her pillow, and allowed herself to cry. Tomorrow she'd be strong for Lily. Tomorrow she'd put on a brave face and pretend everything was fine. But tonight, she let herself feel the hurt and confusion and anger. Tomorrow would also be the beginning of 3 weeks that would either strengthen their relationship or destroy it completely. And Sarah had absolutely no idea which it would be. The first week without Daniel was excruciating. Sarah maintained their routines for Lily's sake, getting her to preschool, making meals, handling bath time and bedtime. But the apartment felt hollow without Daniel's presence, and Sarah found herself constantly reaching for her phone to text him something funny or sweet, only to remember that he'd asked for space. Every evening at 7 o'clock, Daniel would call for his 15 minutes with Lily. Sarah would hand the phone to the excited little girl and then retreat to another room, unable to bear hearing his voice without being able to talk to him herself. She'd listen to Lily's animated chatter about her day, about Mr. Hopps's latest adventures, about things Mama had helped her do. And then the call would end, and the silence would settle over the apartment like a weight. "Is Daddy okay?" Lily asked one night as Sarah was tucking her in. "He sounds sad on the phone." Sarah's heart clenched. "Daddy's fine, sweetheart. He's just working very hard in Seattle, and he misses us. But he'll be home soon." "Do you miss him too, Mama?" "Very much," Sarah admitted, because she wouldn't lie to this child she loved so deeply. Lily reached up and patted Sarah's cheek with her small hand. "It's okay to be sad when you miss people. That's what Daddy says. And then when they come back, you get to be extra happy." Sarah had to swallow past the lump in her throat. "You're very wise, you know that?" "I know," Lily said matter-of-factly, making Sarah laugh despite her aching heart. "Mr. Hopps told me so." Sarah's best friend Jennifer became her lifeline during that first week. They met for coffee every afternoon after Sarah dropped Lily at preschool, and Sarah poured out everything. The conversation with Daniel, her hurt and confusion, her fear that maybe he was right to doubt them. "Let me get this straight," Jennifer said over her latte on day 5 of Daniel's absence. "This man, who has been nothing but supportive and loving for 6 months, is taking a temporary break to make absolutely sure your relationship is built on the right foundation? And you're mad about that?" "Yes," Sarah exclaimed.
No. I don't know, Jen.
It feels like he's saying I don't know my own heart, that I'm not capable of making my own choices about who I love. Jennifer was quiet for a moment, stirring her coffee thoughtfully. Or, she said carefully, he's a man who's been abandoned before, who has a daughter to protect, and who's terrified of getting hurt again. Maybe this isn't about not trusting you, Sarah. Maybe it's about his own trauma, his own fears. The words hit Sarah like a revelation. She'd been so focused on her own hurt that she hadn't fully considered Daniel's perspective. His wife had left him and their infant daughter without warning. He'd had to rebuild his entire life around that abandonment, had to learn to trust again. And now he was in love with someone who'd come into his life at her most vulnerable point. Of course he was scared. Of course he needed reassurance. I've been an idiot, Sarah said softly. Not an idiot, Jennifer corrected gently. Just hurt. But Sarah, here's what I see. Daniel isn't Marcus. He didn't cut you off to punish you or control you. He did it to give you both space to be absolutely certain. That's not manipulation. That's maturity. That's someone who cares enough about the relationship to make sure the foundation is solid. Sarah thought about that as the first week turned into the second. She thought about her feelings for Daniel, examining them from every angle. Was it gratitude? Yes, partially. She was grateful for how he'd helped her when she'd had nothing. But gratitude alone wouldn't make her heart skip when she remembered the way he laughed, or the gentle way he touched her face, or the passion in his voice when he talked about things he cared about. Was it dependency? Maybe in the beginning. But she had her own job now, her own income, her own friends and support system. She didn't need Daniel's apartment or his financial support. She could leave tomorrow if she wanted to, could make it on her own. So why was she still here? The answer came to her one evening during the second week, as she was cleaning up after dinner. Lily had fallen asleep on the couch, exhausted from a long day at preschool, and Sarah had covered her with a blanket rather than wake her. She was washing dishes, the mundane task giving her mind space to wander, when it hit her with perfect clarity. She was here because this was where she wanted to be. Not because she owed Daniel anything, not because she couldn't make it on her own, but because this apartment, this life, this family, it was hers. She'd chosen it, was choosing it every single day. She loved Daniel not because he'd saved her, but because of who he was. Because he was kind and patient and thoughtful. Because he made her laugh and challenged her to be better. Because he was an incredible father who'd shown her what real love looked like. Because when she thought about her future, he was in every vision, not as a rescuer or a provider, but as a partner, an equal, someone who walked beside her rather than trying to lead or control her. And she loved Lily with a fierceness that sometimes took her breath away. This little girl who called her mama, who trusted her completely, who'd shown her what it meant to be a mother. She was Sarah's daughter in every way that mattered. That night, after carrying Lily to bed and tucking her in, Sarah sat down and wrote a letter. She wrote about the scared, broken woman who'd stumbled into the rain 9 months ago. She wrote about being caught by a stranger who'd become her whole world. She wrote about learning to trust again, to hope again, to love again. She wrote about every small moment that had made her fall in love with Daniel, the way he made her coffee just right, the way he listened when she talked about her students, the way he respected her dreams and celebrated her victories, the way he loved his daughter, the way he'd given her space to heal, the way he trusted her with the most precious thing in his life. She wrote about choice, about how every morning she woke up and chose this life. Chose to love him, chose to be here, not out of obligation or gratitude or fear of being alone, but because this was exactly where she wanted to be. You asked for space to know if this is real, she wrote. So let me tell you, this is the most real thing I've ever experienced. You are not my savior or my rescuer. You're my partner. You're the person I want to share my mornings and my evenings with. You're the man I want to build a life beside, not behind or in front of, but beside. I love you, Daniel Foster. Not because you helped me when I needed help, but because of who you are. Because you're kind and strong and vulnerable enough to admit when you're scared. Because you love your daughter so completely that it makes my heart ache. Because you've shown me what a healthy, respectful, genuine love looks like. 3 weeks apart won't change that. 3 months wouldn't change it. 3 years wouldn't change it. Because I'm not choosing you out of convenience or gratitude. I'm choosing you because you're who I want. Every single day, I choose you. So come home, Daniel. Come home and let me prove to you that this is real. Come home and let me love you the way you deserve to be loved. Come home to your family, because that's what we are, a family. Not by blood or marriage certificates, but by choice and love and the 1,000 small moments that bind people together. I'll be here when you get back. I'll be here, because there's nowhere else I want to be. All my love, Sarah. She sealed the letter and set it aside. She wouldn't send it. That would violate the space Daniel had asked for. But she'd give it to him when he came home, a tangible representation of everything she felt. The 3rd week was different. Sarah felt more settled, more certain. She'd done the soul-searching Daniel had asked for, had examined her feelings from every possible angle. She knew, with absolute clarity, what she wanted. Now she just had to wait for Daniel to come home, so she could tell him. She threw herself into preparations. She deep-cleaned the apartment, making it shine. She planned the menu for Daniel's welcome home dinner, his favorite dishes. She bought fresh flowers for the table and new sheets for his bed. She wanted everything to be perfect for his return, wanted him to see immediately that this was his home, and she was here to stay. Lily, picking up on her excitement, became even more animated. Is Daddy coming home soon? Is he? Can we make a welcome home sign? Can we get balloons? Mr. Hops says we should get purple balloons because purple is the best color. So they made a sign, a huge banner that said, "Welcome home, Daddy," in Lily's enthusiastic if somewhat wobbly letters, decorated with stickers and drawings of bunnies. They hung it in the living room, and Lily insisted on checking multiple times a day to make sure it was still there. The night before Daniel was due home, Sarah couldn't sleep. She lay in bed, her mind racing through everything she wanted to say to him. She'd practiced her speech a dozen times, had refined and revised until every word felt right. But as she finally drifted off in the early hours of the morning, she realized that words didn't matter as much as actions. She'd show Daniel how she felt. She'd prove to him that this was real, that they were real. And if he still had doubts after that, well, she'd just have to spend the rest of her life proving him wrong. The thought made her smile as she finally fell asleep, her hand resting on the letter she'd written, ready for tomorrow. Sarah woke to the sound of Lily jumping on her bed, Mr. Hops clutched tightly in one hand.
Mama, Mama.
Daddy comes home today. We need to make everything perfect. Despite her exhaustion from a restless night, Sarah couldn't help but smile at the little girl's infectious enthusiasm. You're absolutely right. Let's get started. They spent the morning in a whirlwind of activity. Sarah made chocolate chip pancakes, Lily's favorite, and, not coincidentally, Daniel's too. They tidied the apartment until it gleamed, Lily helping by rearranging her toys into new configurations that made sense only to her. They put fresh flowers in vases and made sure the welcome home banner was hanging straight. What time does Daddy's airplane land? Lily asked for the 7th time that morning. At 3 o'clock, Sarah reminded her patiently. And then he is to get his suitcase and take a taxi home, so he probably won't be here until about 4:30. That's so many hours. Lily groaned dramatically, flopping onto the couch. I don't think I can wait that long, Mama. I might explode from waiting. Sarah laughed, gathering the little girl into her arms. I don't think you'll explode, sweetheart. But I know waiting is hard. Why don't we do something to make the time go faster? We could go to the park or we could make cookies for Daddy. Lily interrupted, her eyes lighting up. Special welcome home cookies with lots of chocolate chips. So they made cookies, the kitchen filling with the warm smell of vanilla and chocolate. Lily insisted on helping, which meant Sarah ended up with flour in her hair and chocolate on her clothes, but she didn't mind. The little girl's laughter was worth any amount of mess. By 2 o'clock, they'd cleaned up the kitchen, wrapped the cookies in plastic wrap, and Lily had changed into her fancy dress, a purple sundress with butterflies that she insisted was appropriate for welcoming home her daddy. How do I look, Mama? Lily asked, twirling to make the skirt spin out. Absolutely beautiful, Sarah said honestly. Daddy is going to be so happy to see you. And you too, Lily added. He misses you very much.
He told me on the phone last night.
He said, I miss everyone at home so much, and I said, even Mama? And he said, especially Mama. Sarah's heart skipped a beat. He said that. Yep, Lily confirmed cheerfully, oblivious to the significance of her revelation. And then he sounded really sad, so I told him not to be sad because sad is no fun. Mr. Hops agrees with me. Sarah pulled Lily into a tight hug, overcome with love for this perceptive, caring little girl. You know what? Mr. Hops is very wise. I know, Lily said matter-of-factly. I tell him that all the time. At 4:15, Lily was stationed by the window, watching for any sign of her father. Sarah tried to look busy, straightening things that didn't need straightening, adjusting flowers that were already perfect. Her heart was pounding, her palms sweaty. In just a few minutes, she'd see Daniel for the first time in 3 weeks. She'd give him the letter she'd written, tell him everything she'd figured out during their time apart. Don't be nervous, Lily advised. Daddy loves you. He told me so. He said, Daddy's here. The last words came out as a shriek as Lily spotted a taxi pulling up outside. She was off the couch and running to the door before Sarah could even process what was happening. Sarah's hands shook as she smoothed down her dress. She'd changed 3 times before settling on a simple blue sundress that Daniel had once said brought out her eyes. She grabbed the letter from where she'd left it on the coffee table, holding it like a talisman. She heard the key in the lock, heard Lily's excited squeals, heard Daniel's voice, deep and warm and achingly familiar, saying, Hey, my beautiful girl, I missed you so much. Then he was there in the doorway, Lily wrapped around him like a barnacle. His eyes found Sarah immediately, and the world seemed to stop. He looked tired, she noticed. There were shadows under his eyes that hadn't been there 3 weeks ago, and he'd lost a little weight. But when he looked at her, his expression was so full of longing and love that it took her breath away. Hi, he said softly, his voice rough with emotion. Hi, Sarah managed, her own voice barely above a whisper. Lily, finally releasing her death grip on her father, looked between them with the knowing expression of a child who understood more than adults gave her credit for. I'm going to take Mr. Hops to my room to tell him Daddy's home, she announced. You two should talk. That's what grown-ups do when they have feelings. Before either Sarah or Daniel could respond, Lily was gone, leaving them alone in the living room with 3 weeks of silence stretching between them. They stared at each other for a long moment. Then Daniel set down his suitcase and took a step toward her. Sarah, Wait, Sarah interrupted, holding up the letter.
Please.
I need to say this first, and if I don't do it now, I might lose my courage. Daniel nodded, his expression unreadable, and Sarah's heart hammered in her chest. These past 3 weeks have been some of the hardest of my life, she began, her voice shaking slightly. Not because I couldn't manage without you. I could, and I did. Not because I was lonely, though I missed you every single second of every single day. They were hard because you asked me to question everything I felt, to examine whether what we have is real. She took a deep breath, holding his gaze. So I did. I questioned everything. I examined every feeling, every moment, every reason I'm here. And you know what I found? Daniel's jaw tightened, but he remained silent, letting her speak. I found that I love you, Sarah said, her voice growing stronger. Not because you saved me from the rain, not because you gave me a place to stay, not because I'm grateful or dependent or unable to make it on my own. I love you because of who you are, because you're kind and patient and thoughtful, because you make me laugh and challenge me to be better, because you're an incredible father who's shown me what real love looks like. She held up the letter. I wrote this all down because I wanted to make sure I got it right. But you know what? I don't need to read it to you. Because the truth is simple. I choose you, Daniel Foster. Every single day, I choose you. Not out of obligation or gratitude, but because you're who I want. You're who I will always want. Tears were streaming down her face now, but she didn't bother to wipe them away. I'm not Rebecca. I'm not going to leave. I'm not going to wake up one day and decide this isn't what I want. I'm here, Daniel. I'm all in. And if you need me to prove that to you every day for the rest of our lives, I will. Gladly. She crossed the distance between them and pressed the letter into his hand. But if you still have doubts, if 3 weeks apart made you realize you're better off without me, then say so now. Because I deserve someone who trusts me, who believes in us. And as much as I love you, I won't spend my life trying to convince you that I'm not going to abandon you. The silence that followed felt like an eternity. Daniel looked down at the letter in his hand, then back at Sarah's face. His eyes were bright with unshed tears, and when he finally spoke, his voice was hoarse. I'm an idiot, he said. Sarah blinked, thrown by the response. What? I'm an idiot, Daniel repeated, setting the letter aside and cupping her face in his hands. I spent 3 weeks in Seattle, miserable and alone, telling myself I was doing the right thing. Telling myself I needed space to think, that we both needed to be certain. But Sarah, I already knew. I've known since the night I caught you in the rain. He wiped her tears with his thumbs, his touch achingly gentle. I knew the first time I saw you with Lily, the way you were so natural with her, so caring. I knew when you started teaching and your whole face would light up talking about your students. I knew every morning when I'd wake up, and the first thing I'd think about was seeing you at breakfast.
I knew, Sarah.
I've always known. Then why? Sarah asked, her voice breaking. Why did you push me away? Because I was scared, Daniel admitted, his own tears finally falling. Because Rebecca left without warning, and it destroyed me. Because I've spent 3 years building walls to protect myself and Lily, and then you came along and demolished every single one of them in a matter of months. Because I'm so completely, terrifyingly in love with you that the thought of losing you paralyzes me. He rested his forehead against hers, his voice dropping to a whisper. I was a coward, Sarah. I told myself I was testing whether you loved me, but really I was testing whether I was brave enough to believe in us. And these past 3 weeks without you? They were hell. Pure hell. Every morning I'd wake up and reach for my phone to text you something, and I'd have to stop myself. Every night I'd lie in bed thinking about you, wondering if you were okay, if you missed me, if you'd forgiven me for being such a complete idiot. I missed you so much, Sarah whispered. Every second of every day, I missed you. I don't deserve you, Daniel said fiercely. I don't deserve your patience or your love or your forgiveness. But Sarah, if you'll have me, if you'll give me another chance, I promise I will spend every day of the rest of my life proving that I trust you, that I believe in us,
That you're it for me.
He pulled back just enough to look into her eyes. Marry me. Sarah's breath caught. What? Marry me, Daniel repeated, his voice steady despite the tears still streaming down his face. I know it's fast. I know we should probably wait, but Sarah, I don't want to wait. I don't want to waste another second of our lives being apart or doubting or being scared. I want to wake up to you every morning. I want to make you coffee and hear about your students and watch you be the incredible mother to Lily that you already are. I want forever with you. So marry me, please. Sarah thought about the scared woman she'd been 9 months ago, broken and abandoned in the rain. She thought about the man who'd caught her, who'd given her shelter and safety and space to heal. She thought about the little girl who'd shown her what unconditional love looked like. She thought about second chances and new beginnings and the courage it took to choose love again after being broken. Yes, she said, laughing through her tears. Yes, I'll marry you. Daniel's face transformed, relief and joy and love so intense it made her chest ache. He lifted her off her feet, spinning her around the living room while she laughed and cried simultaneously. When he finally set her down, he kissed her with a passion that made her forget everything except this moment, this man, this perfect, imperfect love they'd built together. Daddy, Mama, are you done talking about feelings? They broke apart, both laughing, to find Lily standing in the hallway with Mr. Hops. Her eyes were huge, her smile wider. Are you happy now? She asked. Because you both look happy, and Mr. Hops says when people are happy, it means the feelings talk went good. Daniel knelt down and pulled his daughter into his arms, Sarah joining them a moment later. They stayed like that, the three of them wrapped together, a family not by blood or law, but by choice and love. We're very happy, Daniel told Lily. Because Sarah said yes. Yes to what? Lily asked. Yes to being your mama forever, Sarah explained. And yes to being Daddy's wife. We're going to be a real family, sweetheart. Lily's squeal of delight could probably be heard throughout the building. She insisted on calling her grandmother immediately to share the news, then her preschool teacher, then the mailman who happened to walk by. That evening, after a celebration dinner where Lily ate more cake than actual food and Daniel couldn't stop holding Sarah's hand, they finally got the little girl settled into bed. Daddy, Mama, Lily said as they were tucking her in, I'm very glad you did your feelings talk. Mr. Hops is too. He says feelings talks are important for families. Mr. Hops is very wise, Daniel agreed solemnly. The wisest, Sarah added, kissing Lily's forehead. Sleep tight, baby. Love you, Daddy. Love you, Mama, Lily murmured, already drowsy. Love you too, sweetheart, they said in unison. Later, as they sat together on the couch, Sarah curled into Daniel's side. She thought about how drastically her life had changed in 9 months. She'd gone from broken and abandoned to loved and cherished. She'd found not just a place to live, but a home. Not just people to coexist with, but a family. Thank you, Daniel said softly, his lips against her hair. For what? For catching me when I fell, he said. For being patient with my fears. For loving Lily so completely. For choosing us. Sarah tilted her head up to look at him. You caught me first, she reminded him. Then I guess we're even, Daniel said, echoing words from months ago. But Sarah knew they weren't even. They were something much better. They were partners, equals, choosing each other every single day. They were a family built not on obligation or gratitude, but on love freely given and joyfully received. She thought about that rainy night 9 months ago, when she'd thought her life was ending. But really, it had just been beginning. Sometimes you had to fall apart completely to find the pieces that actually fit. And sometimes, when you're broken and lost in the rain, the universe sends you exactly what you need: a kind stranger who becomes your partner, a sweet little girl who becomes your daughter, and a second chance at the love you always deserved. Sarah smiled, squeezed Daniel's hand, and looked toward their future together. It wouldn't always be easy. Life never was. There would be challenges and arguments and moments of doubt. But they'd face it all together, as a family, choosing love every single day. And that, Sarah thought as Daniel pulled her closer, was the truest kind of happily ever after.